It's Wrestling Observer Radio, bit of an impromptu edition tonight. I was thinking about this. When I used to read your newsletter back in the day, I always thought, how is there enough news for Dave to write about wrestling every week? And then on days like today,
there's enough every day.
You need like 4 of you today with all the stuff going on.
I needed to be at least 3 people today. I know. No kidding.
So
especially with this week's crazy too. I mean, we got NXT Thursday. We got my brother's birthday's Friday. I knew I had something. Saturday we got NXT and NXT TV tapings were here in San Jose on Thursday. That's why I brought that up. And then Saturday we got NXT and UFC. Sunday we've got a 6-hour show. No one's talked about the fact that show's going to be another 6-hour show. And then Monday and Tuesday. And New Japan starts this weekend with the tag team tournament. Not that it's not a big tour, but and they're working on a Conor McGregor match. And this isn't going to slow down.
And now you're finding wrestling matches with people like the A Kid. It's never going to end.
No, man. There's all those great matches that I can't even keep up with. I mean, in a sense, that's a great thing, though.
Yeah, totally.
Realistically, I've been following this for a long, long time. This is the best time ever to be a fan because before, I remember Gabe Sapolsky and I actually talked about this. This is actually a couple of years ago, about how, like, in the 80s and 90s, more the 90s, like, if we saw a 4-star match, I mean, we'd be talking about it for a month. And, I mean, we see multiples of those every weekend. And the reality is the standard is much more difficult, not much easier. Because I watched those matches that I thought were great from 20 years ago, and they're good, but they're not as good as they were then. Because I mean, it's just everyone's elevating their game. I mean, look at these guys like the A Kid. I'd never even heard of this guy. I mean, I should have. And I mean, he'd been in England and he worked for Chikara before in the United States, so he's been around. But damn, he's fantastic.
We'll get to what everyone wants to hear about in a second, but relating to what you just said, because there are so many great matches, like, it's got to be hell on these guys to have to constantly raise the bar.
It is, and here's the other problem. A couple of years ago, even 2-3 years ago, like when the Young Bucks were coming up, and the guys like that, AJ Styles on the Independents and things like that, and the internet and everything was getting, was getting bigger and bigger. It's like these guys could have like a great match and everybody would be talking about it the next day. Well, I mean, like, remember, like, even like it's changed even in like a year and a half. Cause like Omega Okada, like from the Tokyo Dome, which I guess is an extreme example. The first one. I mean, people were just talking about that one for days on end. When they had the one this year, which was a better match than that one, the one in Osaka, the 69-minute match. I mean, people were, there were people saying it was a better match. In fact, most people were. But as far as talk and everything like that, it got wasted in the news cycle by 2 days out.
Expectations. And when the expectations are so high and you have to cross that bar, like before that match, no one knew what Okada and Omega looked like, and now we knew what it looked like. And it was fantastic, but we'd already we've seen it a couple times. So I totally get it. And I can say that, saying what you just said, which is it was a better match. But yeah, like the expectations are so high right now by fans too.
Yeah. I mean, look at Kenny Omega and Phoenix, what they had to do the other night. I mean, but if like they had like a 4-star type match, people would be just saying like, oh, they phoned it in. You know what I mean? Because they're both so good that on a show like that. And I mean, realistically, it was a good crowd. It was a sold-out crowd in Poughkeepsie. But it's a big difference between that and Sumo Hall or Los Angeles or something like that. But because they knew that people would watch, or the Cruise. Like I when I talked to Jericho about the Cruise, and it was just like, at first, everybody was, you're going to have your house show match. You know what I mean? You're going to have a fun match with all the people there. And then all of a sudden, when it got changed and it was going to be a pay-per-view, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, everyone's going to be watching us on pay-per-view. And now you've got to do a pay-per-view match on the boat when you're supposed to be on vacation.
How much of that is also the fact that everything's shot now? Everything's going to be on streaming or on some YouTube or something, everything now, right?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Like, people talk about schedules and everything. And I mean, I just saw like Phoenix's schedule. So he worked, and this is a guy, he worked Wednesday in Austin, Texas. He worked for an independent show. Thursday he was with the MLW show against L.A. Park and his son with his brother, and they tore the house down in Chicago. Then Friday he had a 25-minute, 30-minute match, whatever it was. I didn't time it out with Kenny Omega, which was a fantastic match. Saturday he had an autograph show, and then he flew to Chicago, and him and his brother wrestled Desmond Xavier and Zachary Wentz. They did like a 20-plus minute match, tore the house down. And then 3 days of TNA Impact tapings. I'm not supposed to say TNA. Three days of Impact tapings. Then Wednesday, he's going to be on the Facebook show from AAA in a singles match. Gets a day off. Then he works CMLL in the Leyenda de Azul tournament, which is going to be like, Leyenda de Azul is like one of their big tournaments of the year. So it's going to be, it's a multi-man match, but he's going to have to do all kinds of high spots because he's going to be in there with all the great workers. And he, so it's like sometimes, where people will go, well, they're not working as many dates or something, but like he's working, the Mexican guys are working more dates than anyone. And he's working not just Mexico, he's working a lot of US. What he's doing, what he's doing maybe as amazing as anyone, because when I see him live, he's almost always great. He's not like he's a guy who because his rep is so big, he picks and chooses his spots. If he's in an indie show in front of 400 people, he's still going to give you Phoenix. So, because he's still on the way up. It's amazing. But what's the physical cost of this? It's like, I keep thinking about like with, Flair and Steamboat working all those great matches all the time, but they worked the kind of a match that you could come back and work, night after night after night. It was not an easy match at all. It was a very difficult match, but it wasn't, where, you just, I would never cringe watching what they did ever. And with the guys now, we've seen a lot of cringing stuff. Just in the last 2 nights, we saw Becky Lynch get punched in the face. We got Sunil Singh. Did you see the German suplex that he took?
Yes.
Actually 2 of them. That was pretty scary.
Yeah. Well, okay. We'll get to the stuff that we were going to talk about. I guess first and foremost, for those who have or haven't watched SmackDown, Daniel Bryan is the new champion.
Yeah.
He beat AJ Styles. The angle started at the beginning of the show. He won the match. He turned heel, low kick, referee bump. It seemed like, I guess, when did they figure out that this was what they were going to do? Because it just kind of came out of left field. It seems.
Well,
like.
It was out of left field. So it's a complicated story, but Daniel Bryan himself has been pushing the idea of going heel, just because, his booking as a babyface, with The Miz, it was counterproductive. It's almost amazing to me. This guy came back in March, and here we are in November, and obviously he made this choice sometime back, not a long time back, but weeks back, that he felt he had to go heel. So that was his call. That was not Vince's call. In the end, it's Vince's call. So that was something that he wanted to do that had not been approved, but, whatever. Okay, so then for whatever it was, whatever the reason, I don't know the reason, but it was over the weekend, Vince changed plans and wanted to go with Brock Lesnar against Daniel Bryan, with the title change to Daniel Bryan. So this is before the Becky Lynch injury, but the heel turn was decided this afternoon. It was basically Vince going that let's do it all in one day and get the biggest impact. Now the bad part, or the weird part, is the obvious next question is, they've spent how long trying to tell you that Brock Lesnar is the ultimate heel? He never comes to work, blah, blah, blah. And now you're going to put Daniel Bryan, who against Lesnar, for that match to work, Daniel Bryan needs to be a babyface, but he's a heel. So logically, if perhaps the heel turn should have been, like in the rematch, as opposed to this match. He goes into the Lesnar match as a babyface. They do the match, whatever they're gonna do. But Vince decided to do it this afternoon. Let's all do it at once. Let's shake things up. Maybe the big audience drop from last night. I mean, who knows again what makes Vince, make these moves. Maybe it was just Becky Lynch being hurt, and it's just like, well, just make a big move today that everyone talks about. Although the title change they would have talked about anyway, and the title change was decided whenever over the weekend. So that's the basic gist of everything. Obviously, Daniel Bryan, I'm presuming, is going to get cheered against Lesnar, and then he's going to come back and be a heel against AJ on SmackDown. But the mentality is that everything that happens on this show on Sunday is kind of like it's like part of the storyline, but it's not really the storyline. The storylines are the stuff that's on Raw and SmackDown. This is like a break from the storylines to build up Survivor Series. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like the mentality is like whatever they do, it doesn't count, and then we go back to real storylines, Monday and Tuesday. That's really weird, but that's essentially the mentality.
Daniel Bryan and Brock Lesnar were supposed to have a match at, what was it, SummerSlam?
SummerSlam in 2015? Oh, no, it was 14.
And I think you had said at the time that Brock was just going to run over him.
He was going to do the John Cena match.
Right.
Was the match, yeah. The John Cena sub took 28 suplexes or whatever the number was and just got beaten to one side squash, yeah. That was going to be the match, yeah.
I find it odd to think that they're going to have a competitive match with both of them as heels. I mean,
I don't know what they're going to do. The one thing that I'm kind of worried about is, we talked about that Sunil Singh thing. Man, I don't want to see Daniel Bryan. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like he just throws those guys. I mean, hopefully he's careful, but that, because Daniel Bryan's got the bad neck. I mean, the last thing they need is another injury this week.
He did do the with the suplex off the top rope, the back suplex off the top rope tonight.
He hasn't been hurt yet. He's held up pretty well, but still, I mean, I wouldn't want that. I mean, the German suplexes that Brock Lesnar would give to John Cena, those are fine, and he'll take those fine. I mean, I'm sure I'm not going to say I'm sure it'll be okay because guys are getting hurt left and right. So I don't know what's going to happen, and everything's changing because people are getting hurt left and right.
I think part of, and I don't know how people are reacting to this really. I mean, I know what my friends have said and stuff, but I think one of the allures of Survivor Series was that Brock and AJ could possibly top last year's match. And you mentioned it with Bryan on the show last night, sort of based on how Brock feels. If he wants to have a great match, he could have a great match. If it doesn't matter, then maybe he doesn't care. But what do you sense with, I don't know, first time matchup? Does Brock and Daniel, like, does Brock respect Daniel Bryan, like that kind of thing? Like, as far
I'm sure he respects him as far as being a worker. Everybody does. I don't know. It's still the same thing. Daniel Bryan's visualized this match for years. So
yeah, we know that he's wanted this match.
Yeah. I don't know what, I mean, it's weird because as far as like the reason that it's not AJ Styles, and they couldn't do this later. I mean, yes, shake it up, but you could also shake things up next week too. So they took away. I mean, it's weird because what happened. I mean, the show is basically, all those multiple person matches. I mean, they're there and it's traditional. And again, I always think selling the show based on, and now that's almost irrelevant anyway. It's just a show, and it is what it is. But still, the two big matches were Lesnar against AJ, and the Becky Lynch and Ronda match. From everything I could gather, and everyone's saying the same thing, that was really the main event. And there was a lot of interest in those two matches, and now neither of them is taking place.
Right.
But the idea is that the one, with Becky Lynch being injured, that was out of their control. But the Lesnar one, they could have said, well, we're losing one main event, so let's at least keep one. And Vince just decided not to do that.
And if it was ratings related, not that you said it was, but you were just thinking, without them really teasing that this match was going to happen on SmackDown, I'm sure most people found out about it the same way we did, people tweeting about it or whatever, that they were going to have a match. But I found a lot of people just surprised, like, what? I didn't even know they were wrestling. How did this happen? I'm so surprised that this happened. It seems...
I know, if you're doing it for ratings, why don't you do it next week?
Right.
Build it for a week and all that. Yeah. I think that they have this feeling that because people who live on Twitter think the whole world is on Twitter, and most people aren't. And so they think if we put this on Twitter, but Twitter doesn't. There's been very, very few exceptions. In fact, I remember reading an article, and granted, this was 2 years ago, but it was about something that was like gigantic on Twitter. I forgot what it was. It was like it wasn't a sports thing, but it was something else that like everybody on Twitter was talking about. And then the ratings came in, and the executives thought, oh, this is going to be a big hit, and it was like a nothing. It was like a nothing at all. And I mean, even like on the wrestling things, do they? I don't know that. Like, again, we'll know tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. We're going to know. I mean, if this thing did over 2.2, 2.3 million viewers, then the word of mouth got around in those 2 hours and people tuned in. But if it does, 2.1, 2.2 million viewers, it's like that all that stuff that people did, it wouldn't have meant anything. And I'm sure, I think it'll probably end up being a little bit in between those two, but we'll see.
Okay, so word got out this morning that Becky Lynch was possibly out of the match. And then people were looking for like video of what had actually happened. I think Brian had said maybe he thought it was an inadvertent elbow last night without seeing the footage, but there was a fan cam that came out and you got to see Nia Jax punched her right in the nose.
You punched her in the nose. Okay, by the way, because a lot of people have asked about this and they kept saying broken face. She has a broken nose. For whatever reason, they decided broken nose didn't sound sexy enough, even though that's what the injury is. It's broken nose and concussion. The broken nose she possibly could have worked with a broken nose. Concussion she can't work with. So and by the way, Zelina Vega was cleared today from her concussion. That was one of the stories that was going around also. But yeah. So she got punched right in the nose. Got her nose broken, and I'm sure that Nia Jax, I remember Brie Bella a couple weeks ago just getting it bad. But this was, Brie Bella had no rep going in for hurting people, at all. And Nia Jax does. So these are two different stories. Mm-hmm. And this was, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be, she just throws a lot of people around. I mean, this wasn't throwing people around, but she's hurt a lot of people. That's you can't escape from that fact.
Mm-hmm. And so they tonight on SmackDown, they did a segment where all the SmackDown women were in the ring, and Becky got to choose who her replacement was, and it turns out to be Charlotte. Charlotte's in the line with everybody else, and then they kind of like broke into a hug after she chose her. I didn't like that part of it.
I don't think anyone did. I mean, the last thing you want is like these two women that have just had this great series that in theory, here's the thing. Okay, so we have this 1 week break from our storylines. So what do you do next week? I mean, Becky Lynch is now a babyface. She's not, she said thank you to the fans, and she was a babyface in her promo last night. I mean, it's like she didn't turn. Oh, she did. She turned a couple weeks ago, or whatever it is, 2 months ago. But it's like she's now a babyface. Who does she got as an opponent now? I mean, is it going to go back to Charlotte, who's not supposed to turn heel? I don't even know what's going on. She's going to go fight. I guess they could turn Asuka, which wouldn't be the worst idea at this stage. Because who are the rest of them? Like Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville, Billie Kay. No one's going to care about any of that stuff.
Shayna.
Shayna? Bring Shayna up that quick?
But I mean, you just said a couple minutes ago that they kind of look at this period as like a break from the storyline. So maybe it just goes back.
Oh, that she's going to go back as a heel?
It just goes right back.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I mean, the Miz and Daniel Bryan were scheduled for their blow off in San Jose. And I figured that's out the window now. So I figured that's going to be, they got to do, a gimmick match with AJ and Daniel Bryan for San Jose.
What if Miz and Daniel Bryan become a team?
Oh, God. Wouldn't that be the worst? It could happen too, huh? Well, I mean,
because they were great on SmackDown together last week. That was the best part of the whole show.
They were. And you know what else? If Daniel Bryan wants to get over as a heel, I think teaming up with The Miz probably in its own weird way would help. Because, yeah, people wouldn't want to see it, but it'd probably be in a way where it would actually draw interest and help him be a heel by becoming friends with The Miz. Actually, that actually makes sense. So now they won't do it.
Yeah, I know.
They'll probably turn Miz babyface now. Which every time Miz goes babyface, it's such a disaster. Although I do think now he probably would do better than ever before, just because people kind of respect him now.
So with Charlotte being in this match this weekend, it would seem to me that it takes her out of the Mania match with Ronda.
It does.
Could they come back? Like
It
they
does.
can't come back from it.
Yeah,
for
no,
Mania.
the Mania match today. I mean, it was talked about. It's Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch, which is probably going to be the main event at Mania, or one of the two big matches at Mania.
So you and Brian recently talked about this, about, sort of how they're booking Becky, and this wasn't exactly, she kind of got hot on her own.
That's always what happens.
So I guess my question is if you expect, you got 6 months or over 5 months to Mania, how do you keep her so hot,
especially
going into Mania?
Oh, especially who's her opponent's going to be? I guess Asuka, and hopefully you do something with that. Like I don't know that they'll just walk Shayna in and put her at that level. That's a lot to ask. I don't even know that Shayna's coming in. I mean, Shayna would have to lose the title and then come right in. And anything's possible. I don't know. I mean, there's been talk of people coming up, this weekend, but I don't know. There's always talk around a big show that, one or two people are going to come up. Nobody really knows, and the talent's not even going to be told. If it's happening, the talent won't be told till the last minute anyway.
Yeah.
They'll go, oh, by the way, you're flying out on Tuesday. You're not flying out on Sunday. And that's when they find out.
Yeah. So I guess going back, you mentioned the thing with Brie. Do you sense that? I don't sense that the fan base reacted as negatively to Nia as they did to Brie, or have you seen differently? Because maybe it wasn't so visibly.
Well, it was. I know what you mean, because the kick to the face, I mean, that was like a knockout right in front of your eyes, whereas this one was kind of shielded. But this one ended up being bigger repercussions because it cost people, essentially the main event of a big pay-per-view. Okay, so I'm not getting as much reaction negative to Nia as I did to Brie when I think about it, because with the Brie thing, yeah, it was pretty much, all that emotional, non-thinking reaction and everything. And this one, aside from the fact that there's more validity to it because there is multiple, it's not just one. I know people mentioned, well, Brie missed a move here and there, whatever, missed moves. People miss moves in every match. But as far as like multiple injuries and things like that, over months and things like that. So yeah, it's not as bad, but it's still people are still talking about it. And I'm sure like Nia Jax is going to be getting hammered because Brie got hammered like crazy. Yeah. I mean, that's just the nature of the business in the world. She's going to get hammered, and I don't know. I mean, nobody likes that. I guess the smart thing to do is to turn it off and just ignore it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can do.
With Vince wanting to shake things up, like you mentioned, do you sense more of this kind of stuff happening?
But if they do more of it, then it becomes like, then you do more of it, and then you have that situation where nothing matters again. So you really don't want to do it constantly because you'll burn everything, and that's already kind of an issue with so much television. So, and then this stuff will mean nothing. You want to make it mean something. So, I mean, for SmackDown, they got a couple of things. They got, Daniel Bryan and AJ in a new program, and they've got, Becky Lynch super hot, and we'll see. I mean, Charlotte Flair, that's going to be an interesting match for a lot of reasons. It's going to be Ronda's first match without like constant. You know what I mean?
Practice.
Practice. I mean, first big match that may have to go 15 minutes, where it's it's not obviously not going to be called in the ring, and obviously it's going to be practiced, but it's not going to have as extensive practice as her other big matches have had. But Ronda's, let's face it, Ronda's come through almost. I mean, I don't think she's had, as far as pay-per-view, I think that she's come through in every pay-per-view to a degree. I mean, there was one that some people didn't like, but that was more the booking of the match than the match itself. Charlotte's coming off the best match of her career, I think at the last pay-per-view. So we'll see. I'm sure. I mean, I don't expect a match anywhere near that level, but
I feel like the athletic ability of Charlotte, they'll be able to do some pretty cool stuff because Ronda will be able to, Ronda's a great athlete, and to be able to work with somebody who has great athletic ability as well, I think they'll do some good stuff. But my worry with those matches, as always, and we talked about this before Evolution, is wanting to do too much and show, that you can do all these, these great spots instead of actually telling the story. I think Ronda is getting better at that, and Charlotte was really good at that at Evolution, so I hope that's more along the blueprint to have the kind of match that they could have.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm not worried about spots at all. I'm just worried about, just kind of like, the synchronization of things, where something may get off a little bit, but it can always happen. I mean, but hey, Ronda jumped in the deep end of the pool, I mean, and so far, and this isn't the only sport she's ever done that in. And she's, I don't want to bet against her, because you people who bet against her end up sometimes being right, but they end up being wrong way more. So, yeah, the whole weekend's going to be real interesting. It's a total makeshift show. Lesnar and Bryan is a very different match than Lesnar and AJ. Lesnar and AJ, like you said, we already know that if Brock Lesnar wants to do that match, that it's a great match. Lesnar and Bryan, with Bryan as a babyface, I have no doubt that's a great match, because if Lesnar wants to work and give him a little bit, give him some hope spots and things like that, I have no doubt. But as a freshly turned heel, that's just and being so much smaller, that's just a really weird dynamic. And the other thing too is it's like Bryan, like in the babyface thing, would be like, catching in submissions and Brock having to power out and all that. And does a heel be, like a submission master is very much a babyface role. Like the heel should be, low blows and chop blocks and all that. And you can do that to a degree, but, Daniel Bryan doing it to Brock, or, and Brock's a heel too. So I don't know what the story's going to be.
Maybe he just goes full Zack Sabre. Because he's a great heel.
He's a Zack Sabre fan. I wouldn't be surprised he does the full Zack Sabre. He studies Zack Sabre matches. Zack Sabre's awesome at that. Yeah. Hey, look, these guys are very hard work and very smart guys. The odds are they're going to pull it off. But with Brock, I mean, you just don't know how. Brock's the most unpredictable guy in the world, because still nobody knows what he's doing. We don't know if he's going to UFC or not. I don't even know he was ever going to UFC. I mean, he may have just been playing Vince from day one. for all we know, and Dana too.
But he went into the drug test.
But he had to. If he didn't do that, everybody would know it was fake. When he went in drug, I mean, I took it seriously when he went in drug testing. But I always said that, it's still Brock, and Brock's got the mastermind Paul Heyman with him, but it's still Brock. And to play the game, he had to go into drug testing, because if he didn't go into drug testing, they would know you're just playing a game. So he's in it, but he's still in the drug testing. He hasn't pulled out.
Yep. You guys mentioned last night on the rating because they didn't have the overrun, and I assume the third hour was probably really low because of it.
The third hour was the second lowest third hour in history as far as rating went. So yeah, it wasn't. Number one, there were a couple problems with that. First of all, is that they had the only thing they advertised for the third hour was that Alexa Bliss was going to announce her teammate members, and a lot of people didn't care about that, so they tuned out. Another problem is that a lot of people, if on the way the ratings work is usually in the third hour, people whether it's like 9:45, 10 o'clock, 10:15, people just start leaving. Okay, especially on the weeks where you see the big drop, they start leaving, but they usually come back at 11. Because everyone knows, okay, I'm tired of all this wrestling. The show's too long. But the 11 o'clock to 11:10 or 11:05 or whatever it is, that's going to be the angle that we need to remember. And very few people knew that there was going to be no overrun. I mean, yeah, there are people who knew, but most of the viewers, probably the large percentage, had no idea. So if you come back at 11, you still got 3 minutes. They did go 3 minutes over this week, but it was only 3 minutes. So you didn't build it back as much as you would have if you had 10 minutes. The idea is, in time, people will, in theory, come in at 10:45. But what we don't know is, those people who came in at 11, were they coming in for the last angle, or were they people coming in for the next show? At 10:45, you're not going to get the people coming in for the next show and get that fake audience bump. It's going to be your own audience. And, yeah. I mean, I think the third hour, in the long run, I think it's going to be better for the show. But I mean, we're still talking about, the difference is like legitimately 10,000 viewers, 6,000 viewers in a 3 hour show. I mean, it's microscopic to the point that it's almost irrelevant. I just figure USA is just, for whatever reason, it's just kind of like, why are we doing this? Oh, because we did it 20 years ago when there was a wrestling war and we just didn't stop. You know what I mean? It's just like one of these things that became tradition, but somebody just, looked and goes like, why are we doing this? And especially once the show went to 3 hours, the last thing they needed was that extra 10 minutes.
Did we miss on anything wrestling-wise?
No, not really. I heard there's a boxing. So Fox announced a whole bunch of boxing stuff.
Yeah, a little bit disappointing.
Yeah.
As far as the matches,
this is actually the release that I got today.
I think the thing that I thought was, so there are a couple of thoughts. I don't think that there's matchups on the Fox cards that are going to do much ratings.
That's what I thought when I looked at the names, and I'm not like a big boxing fan, but yeah.
And they're doing Errol Spence and Mikey Garcia, which I think is probably like a really great Showtime fight. And maybe it would do a pretty good rating on Fox. And they're doing it on pay-per-view.
I saw that. And they're doing it at AT&T Stadium, which really
at AT&T Stadium.
Yeah, what's the deal with that?
Maybe they wanted to beat Conor. I mean, they've done boxing at AT&T before, but
the boxing, but they had Manny Pacquiao, which is a lot bigger draw.
Yep.
And even then, they really were doing like 35,000, 40,000. It wasn't like they were doing, which is still a good number.
Yeah, the thing I got out of this was there are some good fights. There are not big ratings fights, and the pay-per-view is not going to do well. And yeah, I thought it was a little bit disappointing for, coming out of that thing, being on Fox and stuff. I thought,
but doesn't it feel like Fox is doubling down on boxing because they lost UFC?
Yeah, I guess.
Because look at all those shows. It's like they, and I don't know. I mean, UFC wasn't doing killer numbers either, but
I guess this is where you get all the FS1 and FS2 rerun programming too, is right? Is if you build up enough shows, then you just put that stuff on those channels.
Yeah, so it's going to become tons of boxing instead of tons of MMA.
Do you sense that they're going to do any of that with WWE? Putting stuff on FS1 and FS2? They don't really. I mean, Raw doesn't do, or SmackDown and Raw historically haven't really done reruns all that much. Plus, they're uploaded to the network in a month or something.
Right.
So yeah, they don't get that same sort of rerun ability with the WWE product.
That's going to be interesting to see how they do that, because they're going to have hours they want to fill. So Cerrone and Conor is looking like a viable.
Is that real?
Okay. It's not fake. I mean, is it real? Only Conor knows, right? But I mean, if you look at the Conor. I wrote about this. It isn't out yet, but it'll be out tomorrow probably. But this was, my Monday night story when I wrote about like what's going up next, and I looked at what do you do next with Conor? Where do you book him? And I mean, to me, the answer is GSP, except it's not, because. I see the thing that I when I see this is that I know GSP hasn't jumped at the idea of fighting, but I can't believe GSP, if offered McGregor, is going to turn down that payday. It could be that UFC doesn't want that fight with the idea that they don't think Conor can beat him, and that that GSP, if he fights Conor and beats him, probably will retire at that point, because it's going to be so much money and there's nothing he can do to top it. He's not going to be going after any championships. If he beats Conor, is he going to really fight Khabib? That'd be a really interesting fight. I would actually be very intrigued by GSP and Khabib, just for a lot of reasons. But I don't think that they trust it's going to happen, and even if they have their word, they won't trust him, because he promised to fight Whitaker and didn't do it. So they don't trust. So anyway. But still, GSP and Conor is a $2 million by fight. I just can't believe that.
What's the deal with Dana and GSP? Why do they have such a weird relationship?
They have a really weird relationship. And the funny part is GSP's a good guy, and he's great for the sport, and he's been great for the company. But he did walk. Well, okay. I think that it probably starts that night of the Johnny Hendricks fight. Yeah, I mean, being there, and Dana was furious. It's like. GSP did some interviews saying he's leaving. He never told them, so Dana's pissed. They had that fight where they all thought Hendricks won the fight, and that they wanted a rematch right away because Hendricks got robbed in their minds, and GSP basically retired on them. And I think it really stemmed from that. And then, but the whole time when GSP's talking about coming back and Dana's going, he doesn't want to fight. And he keeps saying, I want to fight. And obviously, then it was like, he doesn't want to fight. He's asking for too much money. Well, they came to an agreement. He did fight. It did well. He won the championship. He really did get sick. He really did. So you can't hold that against him. But he probably still wasn't ever going to fight Whitaker, even if, you know what I mean? Because even if he didn't, I just have a feeling. And I think they put it in the contract. So he sort of double-crossed them on that. So, but this is different. So you take GSP out of the mix. Who's Conor going to fight? I mean, Cerrone's, I would say GSP 1, Nate Diaz 2, but Nate's, they've had it with Nate Diaz, and I don't blame them, and it's just like, I think they basically come to the idea of, Nate, if you want to fight, call us, we're not going to set anything up. We're not going to work our ass off for something that isn't going to happen. Cerrone's the next best guy for him right now. And it's awesome for Cerrone. Cerrone goes in there. Because the one thing with Cerrone and Conor is I think the build is going to be great. Because Cerrone's he's not a talker at the level of Conor, but he's a talker. And he's a really colorful, charismatic guy. And he's the kind of a guy who, facing McGregor, can become kind of a cool star. The stuff that he did on Saturday, I thought Cerrone was awesome on Saturday. He brings the kid in the ring. That's really smart stuff. I don't even know if he was thinking it smart. He just was or something he wanted to do, but whatever it was, it worked. So I think that I think McGregor and Cerrone is a good fight.
Good fight for Conor too,
if he wins.
Just from an action standpoint,
well,
Cerrone will stand up with him for some of it, and
it's going to be an exciting fight. And I mean, Cerrone's the bigger guy. He's a physically bigger guy. I think Conor's the quicker guy. Conor's not going to have the big reach edge, which is usually his advantage over when he was fighting like the 145ers that he would beat. Is that he just had with those kicks and everything, he had the big reach advantage. But I think it's a cool fight. I would be very excited to see it. And the other thing is, it's a perfect fight. I mean, the GSP fight's the perfect fight to me because it's like with GSP and Conor McGregor, it's like the winner against Khabib Nurmagomedov is just giant. Is another multi million whatever by fight. 2 million by fight or $1.5 million by fight. Either way, no matter what, you can't lose. With Cerrone, Cerrone and McGregor, I mean, Cerrone and Khabib is just a completely different. I mean, that's a unique, weird fight, but it's okay. I mean, I'm sure they would really be rooting for McGregor to beat Cerrone, though. I mean, in their interest in getting that second McGregor-Khabib fight and doing the giant number that one's going to do.
Do you sense Khabib is going to wait to see what Conor does before he figures out if he's going to fight again before, possibly fighting Conor again?
They got Tony Ferguson. He absolutely deserves a championship match. So that's up to UFC to make that match. And Khabib, again, I don't know. I mean, there's been talk that he'll retire early.
Yeah, because you said the same thing about Nate when Nate fought Conor. Was now he had all this money and he didn't, he could kind of wait and see and not fight if he didn't need to fight.
I mean, what do you figure? Khabib probably made $7, $8, $9 million. It's pretty motivating to just kind of lay around. You know what I mean? You're not that motivated to fight at that when you've got that kind of money. But Khabib's also run through everybody. I think he's pretty confident right now. But him and Ferguson would be, but that'll do well. But it won't do. He's not making that kind of money with Ferguson that he would make with GSP or with McGregor.
They also have to wait until see what happens coming out of the commission stuff, right? Because
yeah, we will see about that. The other one too is I mean, the fight Khabib was talking about was Floyd in a boxing match, which I don't know, but it's like, you know what I mean? It's like that's a different level of money. Except that one's probably. Don't you think that one will actually flop? I mean, maybe it won't. I don't know.
I don't think you can do it after the McGregor fight.
That's what I think. I think that like you did the gimmick, everybody kind of bought into it because Conor's such a good talker, but they also saw the end result, and I think that they're just going to see, I think people are smart enough to go like Khabib in a boxing match is easy work for Conor, and it's not even a real, that it's just a cat. I mean, it's all a cash grab. Everything is, but I think that people. I just don't see people like spending like because this is a $100 fight. I can see people just going like, we'll skip the $100 fight on this fraud of a fight.
Could Khabib do it?
In what sense?
Outside of his UFC contract?
No. I think he's got one more UFC fight that he would have to do before he could get out of his contract. Then he'd be a free agent. He could do it. But look, if UFC believes that there's money in it, we've already seen with McGregor, and there's also the whole thing of if he loses, it doesn't hurt because the Conor McGregor coming back and doing that business with Khabib that he did was a real lesson because it's like that's so different from 10 years ago or 15 years ago where a guy goes in a fight and just gets absolutely thrashed and his drawing power gets bigger. It usually didn't happen that way. Now it's all, we're all entertainers. It's not fighters. It's not anything. We're all entertainers, and whoever entertains the most, no matter what the result of the fight is, those are the guys who are going to draw. So I think that the mentality is that also fans are smart enough to know that Khabib in boxing, doesn't count for MMA, and he's still a world champion no matter what would happen. But that may be the same reason why the boxing match doesn't work.
Yeah. Speaking of Floyd, anything coming out of the Rizin stuff?
They still haven't said anything as far as I know. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything new on that at all. It was just a weird story.
Just that, Floyd probably was not being truthful when he said he didn't really know what was going on going into the fight or going into that press conference.
How could he be truthful? There's no way he was truthful. But what's the real story? I don't know.
Is it, like maybe they tried to change it on him or something? Like they told him what it was going in, and then maybe they tried to still change the rules or something.
I don't know. I mean, he was going to get boxing rules because they would do anything to keep that fight going. So I don't think the rules were the issue. The money could be the issue. But I was so stunned when the fight was announced. Even though we had talked about it, like, what was it, 2 days before or whatever? Mm-hmm. You were over here and we were watching.
Yeah, you mentioned it on the radio show just in passing because we were talking about, was it Aoki or something?
Aoki, yeah.
And then you said, oh yeah, the Floyd thing, and then we just moved on.
Yeah. So because I had heard like the talk that he might do the thing, and that would be announced on Monday, which in Japan Sunday night, which was when it was announced. Our time is Monday in Japan. So they actually did the press conference and announced it, and then whatever it was, then then all of a sudden it falls through. But I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that.
So we do have a few questions. I think we answered some of them.
There's one question. Let me remember this. Okay, so I had asked somebody, and we didn't do this on Mondays, but somebody had asked about Elaine McCarthy. Okay, it was John's wife. And I had mentioned
she was also very influential.
That she was very influential in the early days of UFC. So I mean, I don't know that I would have her, again, the most influential people of all time. But when it comes to like the history of UFC, people kind of know John McCarthy's role. The other person you and I talked about earlier tonight that was not on that list of 25 was, and absolutely should be, is Kevin Kay. Mm-hmm. I mean, 100%, he should be on that list as far as the most influential people, because if he doesn't green light The Ultimate Fighter, I mean, that, the biggest story when I think about this, in 25 years of UFC is life is a bunch of flukes. I mean, if you really think about, like, my own life is just been a series of flukes. It really has, okay, in a lot of weird ways. But the history of UFC is all flukes. I mean, in the sense of, you take these key people out and nothing happens. You take Art Davie out, it never happens. Never happens, okay? You take Camel McLaren out. It never happens because, everybody else turned Art Davie down. Camel McLaren was a psycho who would do anything for this. He was looking for some gimmick on pay-per-view that would draw an audience and had no, whatever it was. I don't want to say no moral values because then Campbell's going to get mad at me. He's already mad at me anyway. But you know what I mean in the sense of you needed Campbell was really a crazy guy, and you need a crazy guy to green light this fight to the no rules fighting when nobody knew what it was, unsanctioned, no rules fighting with no gloves and anything goes and all that stuff. So, without him, nothing happens. Without John McCain, who knows where it goes, because maybe Meyerowitz would keep it and it would never get big. When it went down, you take Lorenzo out and all that money. I mean, Dan Lambert would have bought it, and it would have been this tiny little thing, because Dan Lambert's got money, but he doesn't have Lorenzo money. Without Kevin Kay, Lorenzo probably sells it, goes out of business, maybe sells it to Vince even, who would probably manage it into obscurity and, get mad and get rid of it, or who knows what he would do. Because Vince had studied going into MMA, and Shane always wanted to. But he there's no way he would have made it work. Yeah, I mean, Griffin Bonner is interesting, but I think that they always credit Griffin Bonner with being a big deal, and it was. I don't want to minimize it, but I think that if Griffin Bonner doesn't happen, I still think we end up where we are.
What about Lieben Koscheck and that, but also reality TV in general? We know how they set things up. You got producers on the set. Are they engaging with these guys to maybe take it to the next level with Lieben so that they could get these crazy reactions, knowing that, Chris is, he was very passionate about fighting and stuff, and maybe his personality was a little wound. Like, do you think about that? Like, as a reality TV show, like, that was such a great moment, but how much of that was Koscheck and who's the other guy? Bobby Southworth, just being jackasses, and how much of it was them being like, okay, take it to the next level?
I don't know.
That's interesting to me.
I don't know. I should probably find Bobby Southworth or Koscheck. I mean, I talked to Koscheck. I mean, I always felt that Koscheck was the Koscheck you saw there was Koscheck.
Yeah.
We still haven't talked about. So let me finish with Elaine. Well, while I'm at it, before we finish this, So Elaine McCarthy pretty much handled all of like the business as far as the flights and the hotels and all of that kind of stuff for the UFC during all those years. I mean, she was the one who was putting everything together, essentially, behind the scenes that people didn't know about. So that was kind of like her role. And John was, invaluable. You take John out, somebody may have died, and then that would have just been it. That's I said the other night. Joe Silva is another one. They lucked into him. But, it's like Vince McMahon. What if Vince McMahon had foresight and knew what was going to happen? And they go, Vince, we got this idea for this reality show that goes after Raw. What do you think? Yeah, I don't care. Fine, whatever. Mm-hmm. If he knew what was going to end up happening, he's saying no to that. And then if it doesn't start right after Raw with that great lead-in, does it get that kind of a audience? I don't know. Once it got the audience, it didn't need WWE anymore. But that first generation of UFC fans, those were all 18 to 34 WWE fans. I mean, that's what they all were. You take that out of the mix.
With the overrun going into UFC.
With the overrun. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so 2 questions, I think, here. One of them had to do with Daniel Bryan about his lasting contribution. Will he be remembered as a performer who broke a glass ceiling for smaller guys? Other than Punk, he's the most successful indie veteran. Which guys getting pushed now or in the near future owe a debt to Daniel Bryan?
I don't know. It's just Daniel Bryan. I always think that the guy. I mean, there's a couple guys. I mean, to an extent, I think to an extent, Sean Waltman kind of broke a stigma, but the real one was Rey Mysterio. Once he got over, it's like it was hard, but it opened the door for people like Daniel Bryan. Did Daniel Bryan open the door for the Adam Coles and the people like that and the Ricochets? Yeah. They're taken a lot more seriously because of him. But it's all, Ray, to me, Ray's like the one that I would credit. But Daniel Bryan and Punk, both of them, Daniel Bryan and Punk, maybe as much size, sure, and lack of physique in the sense, not that Daniel Bryan's got a bad physique, but he's a smaller guy. And Punk didn't really have that impressive physique that Vince liked, but, was a really successful main eventer. I think that what I think that they're maybe more responsible for is WWE opening their eyes to the independent guys, because Ray came from WCW and was already a star, whereas some of these guys, for years,
like Kevin Owens, guys like that.
Kevin Owens, yeah, who's not a small guy, but those guys, the Kevin Owens guys and Sami Zayn, those kind of guys, based on the standards of 7 years ago, we thought would have careers that would get them to the top in Ring of Honor, and that's where they would top out at, that they would never go to WWE.
But what about the current indie guys? Like, we've been talking about this for months with the Bucks and stuff.
The Bucks are just the Bucks in that category for sure.
Right. So
even AJ to a degree.
But, maybe without Bryan, he talked about the glass ceiling or whatever, but just opening Vince's mind to different guys who he would have never thought about prior.
For sure. And Triple H too. Because Triple H is still a 6'3" bodybuilder, But I mean, Regal went to PWG and obviously Triple H figured out Kevin Owens, you know what I mean? And once you figure out Kevin Owens, then your mind's open to a lot of people, because Kevin Owens, with the belly and everything, it's not the look, that athletic look that they want their guys to have, even though he's not a small guy. But once he got in and he sold merchandise and he came in there and he did that talking, I think that because look at like Adam Cole's like the perfect example of a guy who, I mean, he's just loaded with charisma, but like they'd have just said, he's too small for WWE. All those guys, and those guys are going to be, the Ricochets and all that would be just, and Ricochet's got the great physique and all, but they'd still go 185, right? So I think that once Daniel Bryan got over like crazy, it absolutely opened the door for anyone who's great, not good. Good's not good enough anymore. You got to be great. And it should, what? As far as I'm concerned, if you're a small guy in pro wrestling, you got to be great. If you're just good, there's a million good guys that are big, and size should be part of the game. But you shouldn't be locked out. You shouldn't lock out great guys. That's what I've always thought.
That's why we got to get Ricochet to 206 pounds.
Yeah, he can't go to 205 Live. That'd be dead.
By the way, how is Kevin Owens? Any update on how he's doing?
Yeah, he's just recovering. There's nothing really new. Enjoying time with his family, I guess.
Probably not.
It's
not too bad for him. He could come back a little fresher when he's ready.
Hopefully, when he comes back, he can come back with out of nowhere with. He'll be ready for WrestleMania most likely, but will they start a guy, and again, would it be late February or March or something like that, and give him a program, or are they doing right now? What they usually do is, this is like the period, November, December, where they pretty much start lining up the whole WrestleMania card.
So the other question is, we're going back to the early 80s. Why was Georgia Championship Wrestling a hotbed for Southern Ohio in 83, 84? How did Ole get his hands on TV over there?
Okay, that wasn't so much local TV, although they did end up getting some local TV. That was because the Superstation, Columbus, Ohio, was one of the first cities to get TBS on cable, or strong penetration or whatever. But I remember the whole thing. I mean, San Jose was one of the first too. Mm-hmm. We got it around 79. I don't know when Columbus got it, but I think that what happened was, as I recall the story, is there was something to do with that they did some angle, and Georgia historians will know this better than me, but it had to do with sending letters in over Mr. Wrestling 2 got wronged in some way. It's something to do with Mr. Wrestling 2. And they got, I'm trying to think, I mean, it's so weird because you say a number like this and you just go like, this couldn't be right but it was. They got like, tens of thousands of letters because, they asked people to send mail, and there was a lot of wrestling fans out there, a lot more than now. And but they noticed they got a ton of letters from Columbus, Ohio. So it was kind of like, we got all these letters from Columbus, Ohio. And there were a lot of places where they could have expanded off of TBS that would have drawn from seeing that stuff, but they were leery. They didn't want to go into other people's territory. But Columbus, Ohio, which was the Sheik's territory, the Sheik was, I don't know if he was dead, but he was pretty much dead. So it was kind of like no one's running the territory. The Sheik did get furious that they ran. No one's running the territory. Barnett's still running the company at this point. So, because I remember the Sheik was mad at Barnett. So Barnett, because the Briscoes were pushing Barnett, we need to go. It's like, no, I don't want to go against, I don't want to go against whoever, Vern or Nick Goulas or whoever the guy is, right? Or, I guess it would be Jerry Jarrett by then. And the Briscoes were just like, Jim, I don't want to go against my friends. And the Briscoes were always like, these guys aren't your friends, but they wanted to expand because, hey, we're on the Superstation. Mm-hmm. We got more exposure, and they were stockholders in the company, and the company in Georgia itself was, they were doing okay, but we could go nationally and all this. So anyway, Columbus was the first city that they went to, and the first night, nobody knew what was going to happen, and they went in there and they sold out the Ohio Center, and they had a big run for several years, and they expanded. Les Thatcher was actually the local promoter. They expanded all through Huntington, West Virginia, a bunch of other, it was basically Ohio, West Virginia, and real quickly, they were outdrawing in Ohio, West Virginia what they were drawing in Georgia itself. So the A team of the guys from the Superstation were doing a lot of more Ohio, West Virginia than Georgia. And it got so much that they actually brought in, to satisfy all those Georgia weekly towns, they brought in this circuit, which lasted very short period of time, which was, they brought in Bill Dundee to book, which was where Jim Cornette became a manager in Georgia, and they didn't have the Midnight Express yet. This is before the Midnight Express. And they had Terry Taylor and Bobby Fulton as the Fantastic Ones as takeoffs of the Fabulous Ones. And I think Cornette's Army, or Jim Cornette's, whatever it was, he had it was a bunch of guys. They didn't draw well in Georgia. Ole ended up, getting rid of them all anyway after it didn't work. But I mean, that was like the idea that we'll have this B team running running the Georgia cities, while the A team, the Dusty Rhodes and Ole Anderson and those people, go up to those other cities. So that's where it came from. And I think they probably did get local TV to do localized promos in those cities, but it was really off the strength of the Superstation that they started running those shows.
Observer is out tomorrow night, probably.
I hope so.
Is this WWE stuff the lead story?
Well, unless something big. Yeah, WWE stuff's going to, the whole preview of everything, sure.
And then
hopefully we'll have more details by tomorrow night than what we already have. But we have the gist of it.
And then you and Brian will be back with another Wrestling Observer Radio.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening.